Hello, Taylor Ellwood here with Imagine Your Reality Fiction, and tonight I thought I would talk about how I develop my characters and create them and really work to bring them to life in my stories. I actually got my first review of Learning How to Fly, woohoo! And also I don't know if I showed this or not, but here's the actual book in print format. So there it is. But I did get my first review on Goodreads, and I'm really thankful to that. The person gave it a 4 stars, and that's really good on Goodreads. And basically just said, one of the things, I normally don't read this type of fiction, but this really grabbed me, and I ended up spending the entire night reading it. Well, hey, go me. And part of that, a huge part of that, is the character development. The way that I like to really approach my own fiction is that it's very character driven, as opposed to being plot driven. The character and the plot really comes together. They're entwined together. And in my mind, that's really just a simple thing. You cannot have a good story solely on plot alone. Your characters have to speak to your readers, and if they don't, then there's not a good reason for people to really want to read them. I mean, that's really the case. They don't necessarily want to read your characters if they don't feel some type of sympathetic connection with those characters. And so for me, when I started writing fiction again, one of the things that I really focused on is how I could develop my characters, and it's one of the reasons why I've chosen, as far as a point of view, I've chosen first person as opposed to third person. I have written third person stories, and I probably will write third person stories again at some point, but I focused on first person because it's really easy for me to slip into the character and become part of them. At the same time, what's really fascinating is that as you're developing, your main character, you also have to develop your other characters. You have to do it from a couple key things. You have to do it from the limited perspective of the character that you're writing, whose perspective you're sharing. What does this character know or not know? And at the same time, you also have to write it from the perspective of being the omniscient author. You know everything about the character that you're writing about, or do you really? The answer to that is no, you really don't, because your characters are living beings in their own right. I mean, when I'm writing about my characters, I am developing a connection with them over time that is allowing me to flesh out those characters. Case in point, I'm actually writing the sequel right now to Learning How to Fly. It's called Learning How to Kill. Yeah, I know. Whew, quite a change in title, but trust me, it'll be interesting. But one of the things I'm doing is I'm developing each of the characters, including the main character of Nelson. He's being fleshed out further. He's there's tidbits and aspects to him that we're learning about in the second book. And you might say, well, Taylor, wouldn't you already know this character pretty well? And I do know this character pretty well. But there's a continual process of discovery. You're always learning about the characters that you write about, and you're developing this relationship with them that allows you to truly connect in a meaningful way over time. If you know everything about the character, honestly, it makes the character a little boring at that point because you already know everything. There's nothing to discover. And I think that the act of writing and reading should be one of discovery. So for me, like when I'm writing a story, I'm discovering that story. I'm discovering the characters. I'm learning about them. And as a result, it's changing my relationship with them. So with Learning How to Fly, I wrote it, and I had, I learned a lot about Nelson and Simon and all the other characters. Then I ended up writing my free prequel, Learning How to Feel, and I learned more about Simon and about Nelson than I knew before, even though it was a prequel. Because again, I was fleshing out details, and now it's the same thing with, Learning How to Kill. It's the same thing, and of course, this is also true with the Zombie Apocalypse Call Center, which, is currently being edited. The again, I've developed these characters and I fleshed them out, but when I write the sequel, there will be more details that will come out about the characters. And that's just a natural thing. So I think like when you develop your characters, it's really important to understand that they're living beings and that you're connecting with them and communicating with them. And you want them to be living beings, because if they're living to you, they're going to be living to your readers. You want your readers to connect with them. I know for me, like that review today for learning how to fly was just so epically cool, because right there, what was he telling me? He was telling me that he connected with my characters enough that he wanted to read a book from an entire genre he normally doesn't even read. That's cool. That's what we want. We want to get people to care enough that they actually want to read our stories and share them with each other, with other people, and not only that, but that they want to come back and continue reading. So it's a fascinating thing. And what I find really is I'm writing two different genres, no less. And some people might be, well, like, why are you writing two different genres? Well, what can I say? I'm not. You'll discover over time with me that I'm not a person who's inclined to settle with one or another. I like to really explore and discover and learn, and I like to experiment. So, and that's true even with my creative writing. And so, I have these two genres right now. I have other genres planned that I'm going to explore and write. That's just the way that I am. But with each of them, I still have to keep in mind that I want to develop these characters and I want to learn new things. Now, one thing I am doing is I am developing a bit of a more sophisticated approach to outlining my books. I'm reading a book right now called Plot Gardening by Chris Fox, and what I've done is I've taken some of the stuff he shared in there and applied it to developing my characters, and I do find that it's creating a richer, more nuanced perspective that's helping me write Learning How to Kill right now, and has also helped me write the first chapter of the sequel to the Zombie Apocalypse Call Center. So it's one of those cases where as you develop your writing craft, you learn different skills and things that you can bring to and apply towards your writing that helps you become a better writer, helps you get to know your characters and create something that's compelling enough that people want to read it. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's what I really want. I want people to want to read my books, because if they don't want to read them, then what's the point of me writing them in the first place? So I'm really psyched that I've gotten my first review for Learning How to Fly, and I'm psyched that the character development was rich enough to grab the person's interest. And yeah, there we go. So I'll see you next week for another episode of Behind the Scenes, but thanks for watching. And, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to drop them in the comment field here below, and we'll go from there. Thanks and take care.